Only way out of this pandemic?
No, definitely not.
Many Ghanaians just want a peaceful election and they are hoping there will be no rigging.
There is nothing bad in borrowing for infrastructure. The minister added that he was impressed.
Please come and see yourself what we are doing with the money we have borrowed.
It's very important. The way we brand ourselves is the way people will carry us.
It's just the driver of the two vehicles that were completely bought.
This one was here screaming.
What do you recommend the government do to support this sector?
Direct intervention, that's what every government all over the world has done.
We are not a parallel security structure. A multiple core is a complementary core.
What I will not encourage Christians to do is to carry dagger and follow anybody. No.
Join us on The Breakfast, 7 a.m., Monday to Friday.
Six Nigerians named in list of global terror backers. How worrying is this? And what should the Nigerian government be doing right now?
Coalition of self-determination groups make good their vows to protest at the United Nations. The question is, what can this achieve?
And other issues are on the front pages of today's newspapers, and we'll also be taking a look at all of them in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining us on a Wednesday morning here on Plus TV Africa. I am Osaogi Ogbonwa, and welcome to The Breakfast.
And I am Annetta Felix, and good morning to you. And good morning, Osaogi.
Good morning, how are you?
Fantastic, how are you?
Very great. Let's, of course, get straight into it. It's looking like it's going to be a very busy Wednesday, seeing some of the topics that we have for discussion today.
Definitely. And the first one really is about our internal security. We know that the SSS has alerted, all security agencies in states in the north that Boko Haram members are relocating from Sambisa Forest into southern Kaduna. We saw that in a memo yesterday, and that the NSCDC have been alerted that these terrorists basically are led by a senior Boko Haram fighter. His name is Ibrahim F.U.N. and he's basically walking with his foot soldiers, just walking on foot and relocating from the Sambisa Forest to parts of southern Kaduna. Now, they say that that's the SSS now giving this order that other security agencies should definitely step up all security measures to make sure that they capture these men and, are placed on alert as to their whereabouts. And basically, that really is the story. And it just really reinforces messages we've heard before about these Boko Haram terrorist groups basically controlling parts of northern Nigeria, parts of Borno State. We've heard statements about, intelligence report that these terrorists have made some parts of the northern Nigeria their capital or their own state or their own personal territory, and seeing the freedom with which they move from one place to the other, relocating. And I mean, how do you say a terrorist relocates? Meaning that you want to make that place your permanent base. So it really just says that states do need to do a lot. Security agencies in those states really need to do a lot. If you're able to move from one place to the other, and we keep hearing about, checkpoints within these cities, it makes me wonder why the press release is not that, terrorists have been captured, while on foot. Why is it that, the story is that they are relocating and not that, they have been apprehended?
So the points that I would throw out from here is, first of all, the importance of intelligence gathering, and that's really what the DSS has shown here, that they're able to know these things. They probably have informants on ground, or they have some intelligence gathering software that they use, which is important. So as much as we might criticize them for their inaction here and there, I think it's also important to point out the times when they have done their job. So it's important that they are able to point this out. A lot of Nigerians reacting to this that I saw yesterday were basically saying, so why are you telling us? Why don't you go ahead and and arrest them? Since you know where they are, you can tell that they are moving from one place to the other. If you can see them, but why don't you go and pick them up, or attack or arrest whoever? And which is a legitimate concern. Like you've said, how is it for terrorists and terrorist leaders to move from one part of Nigeria to the other, while our intelligence agencies can tell, that they're moving, and yet, we still don't hear news of them being arrested? Where did they pass? What checkpoints did they have to go through? In what ways did they transport themselves? Was it on foot? Was it with their bikes? Was it in vehicles? And what happens next? And I'm not even sure why the NSCDC has been mentioned here, because they've not shown to be in any way capable in the fight against terror. Neither were they, in any way relevant. It has always been the Nigerian police. The NSCDC only comes up very, very embarrassingly in some cases that, to guard, seize property. How many times do you get to see the NSCDC, in actual crime fighting? They really, you see them when a government building has been seized, and you see the officers there standing to guard, some of all of that. But it's important, now that the information has been shared, that the police and security agencies take action. And arrest these persons, and do whatever is necessary to make sure that we eliminate that threat completely. Another thing that is important is to know exactly why Southern Kaduna. Why is that place the safe haven for terrorists? Is it, first of all, why are they moving from Sambisa? Has Sambisa now become too hot for them? Or is there a new plan that they are going to achieve in Southern Kaduna? Are they going there because that is a safer spot for them? And that's a question that, we should be asking both security agencies and the Kaduna state government. What exactly is going on in Southern Kaduna? Because you don't hear about this kind of things in many other parts of Kaduna, but the South. Which has for a long time continued to suffer most of the violence and the damage from terrorists in Kaduna State. So these are the important questions that I feel we will need to open up, and Nigeria's government will have to answer at some point.
And from security to educational concerns, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin, Lilian Salami, has ordered the indefinite shutdown of the University of Benin. Now, this order by that VC follows a series of protests that have been going on in the University of Benin by students who are protesting late charges on school fees. So the order by the school is that, if you pay your school fees after the specified time, you would have to pay late charges of 20,000 naira extra. So students of the University of Benin have been protesting. The pictures we've seen on social media have really gone viral. People holding placards, putting tires to block the roads. We see motorists that are basically stranded. You can see traffic and gridlock for a long time, as far as your eyes can see. It's just, what it is right now, the state of our educational system. When we went to school, at least during my set, when I went to University of Benin, it was 15,000 naira that we paid as school fees. And that's what, you can see on those placards, people holding those placards to say, how did the school fees go from 15,000 naira to 40,000 naira to 61,400 naira in a short space of time? And they're really asking that, what is the essence of this, increment in school fees? So the Vice Chancellor said that, let me read the statement for you. She says, after due consultation and in the overall interest of the general students' body, the Vice Chancellor has, on behalf of the Senate, approved the closure of the university with immediate effect. This is based on security reports to avoid students' action being hijacked by hoodlums and thereby prevent any form of breakdown of law and order within and outside the campuses of the university. Accordingly, all students are to vacate the hostels and the university premises not later than 12 noon on Wednesday, 15 September 2021. So by 12 p.m. today, students are expected to have vacated the premises of the University of Benin, but we doubt that really that's going to happen.
Also, yeah, well, so one thing that I will point out is from the message from the Vice Chancellor, it looks like a very, stereotypical, reason for clamping down on the protests, the fear of it being hijacked. I remember they used that same thing, during the NSAS and, also many other protests that have, meant to happen here in Nigeria. Government would always say, oh, because we fear that it will be hijacked by thugs and some of all of that. And so, protesting is not allowed. So that's the first point. The second one is, she also hasn't addressed the main concern, which is why you're adding 20,000 naira on top of school fees for late payment. A person that couldn't pay the original school fees, how do you expect them to get an extra 20,000 naira to pay, for late payment? They might have seen that, students on campus usually delay with paying, their school fees when the university needs money to fund its activities and run the system in that whole semester. So maybe that's one of the reasons, but at the same time, 20,000 naira seems quite a lot, as penalty for late payment, and I don't know why they, after sitting in their Senate, decided that that was a suitable amount to, put as a penalty for late payment. And, I've also seen a lot of those comments. If we can't pay the regular school fees, how are we going to find an extra 20,000 naira? If our parents are struggling to pay the 61,400 naira, where are we going to get 81,400 naira to pay our school fees? And it's some of these reasons why a lot of students in Nigeria have to then. We already don't have a university system that allows you to work and school at the same time. There's not that many jobs. And you see a lot of these young students starting to do internet fraud, the young girls starting, to move in different directions just to earn money. So we can already tell that it's not the, easiest life for students. So I personally don't agree with, a 20,000 naira fine. Maybe a 2,000 naira fine, maybe a 5,000 naira fine, I don't know, but not 20,000 naira.
People I ask say they pay 5,000 naira in other schools, so
yeah, why 20,000? The university itself is trying to raise money. That one I know because I also went to Uniben. My parents, my dad was a professor in Uniben for 35 years before he retired. So it's a part of my growing up. And one other thing that I will say before we go is, I grew up in University of Benin. I grew up on campus. I have seen what rioting is like and protesting is like. In the 90s, we will not be talking about it the way we're talking about it now. In the 90s, that was when it was a hotbed of cultists and violence. That was what Uniben was known for back then. There have been beheadings. There have been the worst of crimes committed right on that main gates and on campus, in medical hostel, in exam halls. It's been a very, very terrible scene many times. So it's a very different picture from what we are seeing now. Now the students are a lot calmer. Now if you protest, they block main gates, put burn tires, hold placards. Back then in the 90s, there was no placards. It was just outright violence and destruction. So good thing that, it has calmed down and it's not as bad as it used to be. But I also feel like students, yes, they have a right to protest. And there should be some negotiation between the Student Union government and the university. 20,000 naira seems outrageous for a penalty, simply for not paying school fees on time.
My comments for the bigger picture regarding hiking school fees. We know what it's like in the private universities. It seems you're getting your money's worth, even though it also seems overpriced at the same time. And federal universities should be like the schools where the average Nigerian should be able to attend, should be able to afford an education. But it's seeming like a far cry from, what it should be. Look at the Kaduna schools, for example. People protested, the hike in price of school fees, and we really wonder where it's going. So on the flip side, we know we keep talking about how universities should be self-funded, should be able to generate their own funding. But I really wonder if increasing school fees for the common man, is the right way to do it. Because when we look at other countries, I see how they do it. They seek funding from international partners, and they get those funding. They have scholarship schemes for indigent students that lots of Nigerians and lots of Africans have been beneficiaries of. You have scholarships of the government, the state government, the federal government. Look at the UK government. They have lots of scholarship programs, both for local and international students. Do you have any, scheme like that is self-sustaining? We've seen lots of, it's just a whole lot of
so
issues.
we don't have
but
that
I
system
also
here.
want to, pitch in that, when you even look at, those global bodies like the European Union, they also have scholarship programs for, local students and also international students. But we want to look at the AU, for example, and see, are they matching up? And, they might want to bring in the defense that, we're formed as a political organization. But that's what the EU is supposed to be. But they also have elements that promote education. Do you have the AU having a scholarship scheme for, students across Africa? Do you have a national scholarship scheme? You only have these oil companies who come up for do scholarships programs, and we know that process itself is corrupt. If you don't have slots, if you don't have connections, you can't get it. So education really needs a lot of investment in Nigeria, and it's sad that we're still missing it.
We don't have a lot of the things that you've mentioned. I know that universities are still trying to find their footing financially after the COVID-19 period. After the lockdown last year, a lot of the funding reduced drastically. They're still overly reliant on federal government funding, sadly. And, they've also not been able to, I think it was Jide Johnson that pointed that out, that they've not been able to look inwards to see how they can raise money for the universities without overly relying on the federal government, and thereby also reducing the cost of education for themselves. So I guess, I'm guessing that is what Professor Salami is trying to do here, to raise money.
They should be applying for grants. There are ways. They should study the models
you have to be
of
able to
international.
offer, there has to be some value that you offer before you apply for a
That's the
grant.
thing. And you can't get that value by kicking students out of schools because they can't afford to pay school fees. It really wouldn't work. Let's go to China and Afghanistan. We know about the Taliban takeover August 15th. It really shook, most of the world regarding how they basically, upturned government in Afghanistan. And lots of countries have been opposing this. But one country that seems to be taking the side of Afghanistan and the Taliban here is China. So we see that China seems to be throwing its weight behind the newly formed interim Taliban government in Afghanistan. And the Chinese ambassador to Afghanistan have congratulated the Taliban government. And, this is news we heard from the Taliban spokesman, Mohammed Naeem. He said on Tuesday that the foreign minister of the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan-led government met with the Chinese ambassador, and that the Chinese ambassador went ahead to congratulate the new Afghan government, saying that China will continue to develop and strengthen humanitarian economic cooperation and relations with Afghanistan. Naeem also said that China has pledged a $15 million worth of humanitarian aid and continued support for Afghanistan, along with 3 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine. Of course, in reaction to this, the acting foreign minister of the Taliban's government thanked China for their assistance, saying that, China and Afghanistan are neighbors. They're going to develop along bilateral ties and all of that. So, again, my commentary on this is, when I take a look at how international, strategic studies, analysts and all that, have been looking at this, it definitely is obvious that China's support for Afghanistan here is purely economical. You can hardly find traces of, what political links they might have or what political affiliation. It simply seems to be economical. China here, as it has been interpreted, is looking to tap into the mineral resources of Afghanistan, see what they can benefit. And people have been talking about China's Belt and Road policy, saying how they can, build those roads and create new trading routes in Afghanistan. So it seems like, from an economical point of view, China simply wants to just latch in and see what it can benefit. What do you?
It's also, I think it's pretty obvious that this is always about benefits that you gain. Even the United States, Germany, whoever it is that is supposedly moving into your country or pledging support is really because of benefits. And no country just goes there because they like your face. They have to be, certain benefits that they've seen that they can achieve. And that's why a lot of people have also pointed out the relationships that China has with a lot of African countries, the loans, the grants, the money, the funding. It's not because they, suddenly care about, these African countries, including Nigeria. It is because they have looked at the next 10, 15 years and seen that there might be things that they can benefit. So it pretty much is the same thing with Afghanistan. And Afghanistan's government, as it's currently, the Taliban government in Afghanistan, I don't know if they understand these things as well as they can. But in the last 20 years, Afghanistan as a country has run mostly based on funding from the West. They've not been able to actually set up or run the country by themselves. It has been 80% of funding from United States and from the West generally. And so that funding has to come from somewhere. Now that they have taken over power, and this is one of the things a lot of people have said, if you listen to podcasts on the Washington Post or the Daily or Post Reports, anything, they will explain these things better. That the Taliban government itself, a lot of people don't believe that they are ready for governance. They might be, hungry for power, but governance is one thing that they need to be ready for. And so they will have to make alliances here and there that would assist them until they're able to find a footing, which a lot of people doubt that they will be able to ever find that footing by themselves, because they are not really, technocrats or, people who really have a lot of knowledge concerning governance. But with China itself, one of the things I'll point out is for a lot of moves, international politics, a lot of people don't understand the real reasons. We can only postulate and say, okay, maybe this is why this is going on here and there. I know that China is seriously trying to become a world power. The United States has been fighting this for a long time. And that's why you would see that China always will support anything that the United States has pulled away from. They would plug themselves in there. The same thing with Russia. Once the U.S. has, found some enemy someplace, China and Russia immediately step in to back that power. It happened in Syria with Assad. When the United States was, seemingly trying to bring down Assad's government for whatever crimes it was accused of, Russia was fully in there. Pretty much the same thing with China, and that's what China is doing now with Afghanistan. But we may never really understand what their motive is. We're only just here to watch. The victims of all of this will still be the people of Afghanistan. The Taliban government, if it will succeed, is left to them to decide. And whatever alliances that they decide to cling on to, because they need to, get funding, they need to be able to build infrastructure, I believe, and run their government. They need to also look further at what the gains and what the pros and cons are with some of these alliances. But China, has a lot of money to share or spread around, so good luck to them.
Talking about money to share, there are lots of stories about business and economy on our national dailies, and we're taking a closer look at them on Off the Press. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there's regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. NIMASA bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
NIMASA This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on PlusTvAfrica.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamude Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
Welcome back to The Breakfast on PlusTvAfrica. It's now time for Off the Press, the segment where we take a look at the stories making the headlines on our national dailies. Let's say hello to our guest, the public affairs analyst, Mr. Femi Lawson. Good morning, Mr. Lawson.
Good morning, the Plus Musician.
Thank you for joining us. Let's begin with the Daily Independent newspaper. The headline reads, Condemnation trails Buhari's request to borrow $4 billion. 710 million euros. Experts, PDP, say fresh loans will deepen economic crisis. Above that headline, Edo prohibits unvaccinated persons from entering government offices. Buhari says 1.6 million households, 8 million Nigerians benefit from CCT. CBN to establish International Finance Center. Below the headlines on the Daily Independent, IPOB warns impersonators as Southeast is locked down again. Hush puppy. Buhari will have final say over Abba Kyari's fate. That's according to the minister. Says Police Affairs Ministry yet to hear from President on Magu. Buhari seeks stiffer control against small arms and light weapons. ASU warns FG pushing it beyond limits. UAE names 6 Nigerians as Boko Haram financiers. Nigeria's spending on e-commerce hits $13 billion per annum. Lastly, on the Daily Independent, e-transmission of results. Listen to Nigerians, PDP governors charge National Assembly.
And on the Punch newspapers, big story there says experts and others carpet National Assembly as Buhari plans $4 billion, 710 million euros borrowings. Loans will reduce poverty, says the president. Public debt rose from 12.12 trillion naira in June 2015 to 33.11 trillion naira in March 2021. Perpetual borrowing, lawmakers working against Nigerians' interest, will account for their actions, says a group. Also on the Punch, VAT battle shifts to Supreme Court as Rivers challenges order. Rising unemployment can wipe out Nigeria an elite, or can wipe out Nigeria. Elite unsafe, says Ngige. Looming strike hold federal government responsible, ASU tells parents. We can also find on the Punch, indigenous nationalities protest at UN warn against Nigeria's disintegration. And on Kogi prison attack, GGC threatens fleeing inmates with prosecution. Sit at home, hurt in Southeast, Umahi, Obi lament, and violence in Anambra and Enugu. 60 landlords desert houses as flood overwhelms Ogun community. And also, Fayose may join PDP national chairmanship race. These are the big stories on The Punch this morning.
We see similar stories on the Nigerian Tribune, still about the president seeking approval for fresh $4 billion loan and 710 million euros loan. The president, the APC, selling Nigeria, says PDP. IPOP bows to pressure, cancels sit-at-home order. COVID-19, Edo begins enforcement of restriction for unvaccinated persons. Ogo joint VAT war, bill passes second reading at Assembly. Amoteku arrests herder 180 cows for flouting anti-open grazing law. Bajabia Miller endorses Sanwo-Olu for second term. Southern governors meet in Enugu tomorrow. AMCON AIG's CPs to support debt recovery drive. CBN to launch 15 trillion naira infrastructure fund in October. Kogi jailbreak. 114 out of 266 fleeing inmates recaptured. Uniben students block highway over 20,000 naira late registration fee.
And on the This Day newspapers, Buhari rallies banking sector support to lift Nigerians out of poverty. 15 trillion naira infra core ready in October, says Emefiele. CBN floats Nigerian International Financial Center. Also, on This Day, on value-added tax, Wike goes to Supreme Court. One stay of execution nullified. President seeks Senate's approval for $4.179 billion and 710 million euros external loans. The PDP says Buhari and APC selling Nigeria, urges National Assembly probe. And ex-Unilai Council member seeks trial of VC for breach of procurement law. Good morning once again to Femi Lawson. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
All right. I think the most popular story this morning is the loan that the president is once again seeking, $4 billion and 710 million euros. What's your reaction to this?
We must understand that these borrowings that the president has been pushing the request to the National Assembly, in successive manner, is such that has become inevitable. Because if you followed the process of the making of the 2021 Appropriation Act, you understand that it has been explicitly stated by the president while presenting that budget that the source of funding of this budget, under most of the headings, are going to be coming from external borrowing. So today, I think what the president is doing is just the inevitable, even though it is very unfortunate that we have to continue to live on debt as a nation, that we have to continue to use the greater part of our annual budget to service debt. I think Nigerian people, particularly the opposition parties that are not making noise about this request by president, should have understood that it is not starting by now. There is a foundation. What role did they play when the president brought budget to the National Assembly and emphasized that this budget is going to be funded through external borrowing? Have we also forgotten that when these requests are going to be presented on the floor of the National Assembly, members of the opposition parties who are legislators are always present to give ratification to some of these requests? So I think the PDP in particular must go beyond merely issuing press releases and become serious as an opposition in terms of policy, and critical analysis of government, programs, particularly the making of the budget, which is affecting all of us. Well, it's very unfortunate that the country is so much immersed in debt to the extent that not even the generation that is currently borrowing will be able to pay this by the time it is over.
Yeah, well, but Mr. Lawson, is it important to also question how well we have used the loans that we've taken in the last 6 years? Because we moved from 12 trillion to 33 trillion naira debt in 5 or 6 years. So is it important to question how well we've used these loans, and also maybe also encourage government to look out for other ways that we can save funds in Nigeria. Loans cannot be the only source of income to fund Nigeria's budget. Don't you think, Mr. Lawson?
You see, our penchant for taking loans like we are currently doing is a direct reflection of the unproductivity that that has characterized governance in Nigeria. Not only the federal government. There's hardly any state in Nigeria today that is not indebted, either locally or also to foreign lenders. And what does this imply? It implies that our states, the federal government, are no longer productive for a country that is so blessed with human and natural resources to rely so much on extra borrowing to run government, to fund its programs, shows that we are not productive. And there is no way this country can be productive or our states can escape this burden of debt until we begin to look at restructuring this country. We have continued to emphasize on this. Some states in Nigeria have no reason to be poor. Some states in Nigeria have no reason to borrow. But because they are not productive, because the system has also crippled and incapacitated them, they have no other option than to keep borrowing to run government and to service the state. Quite unfortunate also is the fact that majority of these borrowing do not go into capital development, capital projects. A lot of our spending still goes on recurrent, mostly to service, political office holders in Nigeria, at the detriment of developmental projects that will impact on the life of the ordinary people. That is the irony of it.
Okay. Mr. Femi Lawson, when we take a look at the papers this morning, we see a story regarding IPOB. It's on the Daily Independent. It says IPOB warns impersonators as Southeast is locked down again. And when we go to the Nigerian Tribune, just above the headline, we see the story, IPOB bows to pressure, cancel sit-at-home order. Now, when we took a closer look at the story, we saw that, IPOB spokesman came out to say that from September 14th, there was no longer a sit-at-home order in the Southeast. It's effectively cancelled. They went ahead to condemn all the atrocities that have been carried out by people who claim to be members of IPOB. The recent the recent incident of motorcycles being burnt in Imo State, they condemned that and said they were going to replace those motorcycles and rebuild the blocks of classrooms that were destroyed. They just went on, and it seemed like they had turned a new leaf, saying that IPOB was a responsible organization that would only sit at home on the days when their leader, Nnamdi Kanu, would be having court appearances. So what do you think might be responsible for this change of heart? Would you say it's a combination of efforts of, an outcry of Nigerians? Would you say, like Emmanuel Powerful said, it's because of the impact, the economic impact on the Southeast? Would you say it's the governors, the Ohaneze Ndigbo, or the president's visit?
It's not we are witnessing. Is the reality, considering the fact that the latest statement is not the first, from IPOB, suspending the sit-at-home order. There has been an earlier directive that the sit-at-home order be suspended, but the unfortunate situation is that criminal elements within the Southeast have exploited the sit-at-home order to unleash violence, to assault people, and to maim innocent people under the guise of enforcing the sit-at-home order. The sit-at-home order, for the avoidance of doubt, is a civil form of protest by people to express their displeasure to whatever policy or whatever happening around them. And what does it mean to sit at home? It's a voluntary action. It is left for those who choose to sit at home to sit, and those who want to express their constitutional right of free movement to also do. But when it gets to the point where non-state actors, militia, are beginning to enforce what ordinarily should be a civil action, then that must be treated purely as a criminal offense. It is impressive that the governors of the Southeast and stakeholders are rising up to speak against this evil. It is very clear that some elements are out to sabotage the IPOB agenda. The IPOB, of course, has been known to organize itself, especially when its leader, Nnamdi Kanu, was around. But that nonetheless, the IPOB must not allow these criminal elements to sabotage its agitations. Otherwise, everything that it has demanded for all this while it has agitated for will be swept under the drain. IPOB has to be very careful at this point in time. There must be a clear-cut, defined leadership, even in the absence of Nnamdi Kanu, because it looks like all sorts of characters now speak for IPOB because of the absence of their leader. So IPOB also has a responsibility to have a clearly defined leadership that will give others and some of these things that they are doing, not just, a gang of criminals operating as IPOB, assaulting people, destroying people's property, stopping children from writing examinations. It is time IPOB come out with an alternative leadership that will be speaking and representing, its voice.
Okay, Mr. Lawson, let's now also talk about the value-added tax debate, as the Rivers State government seems to be moving to the Supreme Court to, of course, get a favorable ruling, if possible. How do you see this playing out?
Well, it's important that we do not see this as a Rivers State issue anymore, even though Governor Wike has led, the crusade for what some of us see as a right thing and a very big part towards restructuring this country. Only yesterday, the bill, on VAT also scaled the second reading in the State House of Assembly. Yes. And I can assure you that more and more states, not only in the South, even in the North, will join this litigation by the FIRS against Rivers State government, and others who have now shown interest. It is time for us to begin to really define some of these dictates of our Constitution that have been abused, that have been misinterpreted by operatives of the successive administration in Nigeria. We must understand that it is not this administration of President Buhari that took over the collection of tax, VAT from states. It has been there, but it is good that a state is coming to correct this impression, and Governor Wike is doing the right thing by ensuring that adequate judicial interpretation is given to the issue of VAT, especially the ruling of the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt, which gave the power to collect, VAT to states. So I think it's the right step, and I think more states should be interested in what Governor Wike is currently championing on the VAT.
Yeah, but just to quickly add to that, is there any other way around this? Do you think the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal in any way can interpret the Constitution different? Or the FIRS still has, something to fight for?
No, well, it is within the right of the FIRS to continue to, fight for the retention of his power to collect the VAT. But the truth is that it is also the exclusive preserve of the Supreme Court to interpret the Constitution of the Federal Republic. The Constitution has given the Supreme Court that power, and I think the Supreme Court is the appropriate authority that will do the interpretation as regards the power of states and what categories of taxes are states empowered to collect in Nigeria. So I think the FIRS has not also shown any posture of willing to engage these states on this tax issue. So I think the best thing to be done is, of course, to approach the Supreme Court.
Mr. Lawson, finally from me, there's a story on the Daily Independence just at the bottom left that reads, UAE names 6 Nigerians as Boko Haram financiers. We've heard statements from the UAE, even last year, that it knows someone in government, that was a member of the Boko Haram financiers list. And now it's named about 38 people and about 15 agencies, and amongst them is 6 Nigerians. What do you expect the UAE and the Nigerian government to do with this information?
What I think the Nigerian government must do at this point in time is to consolidate on what the UAE government has done by exposing locally people who have been identified as sponsors of Boko Haram and other insurgent groups in the country. We have intelligence organizations like the DSS, the NIA, DIA, all of them having records of how the activities of Boko Haram and some of these insurgent groups have been financed in the past. And I don't think it is right for government to continue to conceal the identity of these people, especially at a time that these insurgents are becoming more emboldened, more empowered, and more sophisticated, even for the Nigerian forces to tackle. One of the best ways to tackle this menace of insurgency is to expose their sponsors, just like UAE is doing, just like United States has also promised to do, and we can begin to reduce, their sources of funding, another empowerment that is giving them the leverage they are so much enjoying in the country today. So I think the government of Nigeria must be sincere enough not only to get these 6 individuals that have been linked to sponsorship of insurgency, probed and prosecuted, but also expose more, including those that have been accused of being in government, who are behind the sponsorship of Boko Haram and other insurgent groups.
All right. And of course, ASU once again is talking about strike here in the country, and they say, the federal government should be blamed if they eventually go back on strike. Femi Lawson, do you think that the Nigerian government, has failed in managing these crises here and there, including with the NARD?
The Nigerian government has not been fair in the way it has been dealing with public education in the country. It is very unfortunate that we have a bunch of leaders whose children school abroad and are not in any way interested in the fate of education in the country. Just like ASU said, and for some of us who have followed the dispute between ASU and federal government for over 10 years, you come to realize that federal government, according to ASU, have only been able to fulfill one of the major points of demand of ASU. And we must always understand that the demands of ASU are not just about the welfare of university teachers, but also the improvement on the state of education on our campuses. And I think for any society that is willing to genuinely develop, that does not want to live its future in debt like we're currently doing, such country must take education seriously. And our country is not taking this. It is very unfortunate that we continue to have low budget appropriation, then fundamental issues that have to be addressed, like what has been raised by ASU, are not being addressed. And I think it is within the right of ASU as an industrial union to use that only tool it has, which is strike, to make its demand. But I think the federal government should not allow ASU to go on another strike.
Let's appreciate your insights on Off the Press this morning.
It's my pleasure.
All right. So with us, we're going to be going back in history next and sharing with you what happened on this day, 15th of September, many years ago. I'm going back to talk about one of the famous names in boxing, Muhammad Ali, and what he was able to achieve on this day.
And I'm going back to the year 2020, just a year ago, to tell you about a landmark ruling regarding the death of Breonna Taylor. Stay with us.
Welcome back to The Breakfast here on Plus TV Africa. Now let's go back in history to 1978 to share with you on this day, Muhammad Ali once again defended his world heavyweight boxing title and won the championship against Leon Spinks at the Louisiana Superdome in New Orleans. Of course, he won it for the third time in his career. He was the first fighter to ever do so in a unanimous 15-round decision. After his shock win over Ali to become heavyweight champion, Leon Spinks was stripped of the WBC title for not facing its #1 ranked contender, Ken Norton. Instead, he agreed to rematch with Ali. Ali eventually entered a rematch as a 2.5 to 1 favorite and eventually won the game. Won the fight eventually. And right after this fight is when he retired from boxing. He eventually returned, a few years later to boxing. But this was one of the first times that he retired from boxing. And also to go back in history, heavyweight fights that he had previously won before Leon Spinks. In 63, he had defeated Sonny Liston. 65, he defeated Floyd Patterson. 1974, this is after Leon Spinks, he then fought George Foreman. And I think that was the one that was called Rumble in the Jungle. And then in 1978, he eventually won the fight against Leon Spinks. But this is, some of the biggest fights, that made Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali, who he was.
Yes, fantastic news there. We know obviously that this was a match that was, highly televised. People needed to see what was happening. Muhammad Ali fighting back to glory and winning that World Heavyweight Championship. Good one.
Absolutely.
And in 2020, the family of Breonna Taylor announced a $12 million US wrongful settlement. What happened was, we know that Breonna Taylor had been killed by police officers who, they just came into a room that night to execute a search warrant for a drug bust. But, it was a wrong apartment then, and they fired at her. She was just 26 years old. And it was a very big story, one of those stories that shook the U.S. regarding racial discrimination and things like that. But it was on this day in history that the city of Louisville actually agreed, to pay her family the sum of $12 million. And it was a lot of money. It was one of the largest of its kind in the United States, because we know that before then, police departments are usually shielded, from having to pay damages for death in their custody. And no police officer had been criminally charged with the death of Taylor, but we know that at the end of the day, the family received the sum of $12 million. I believe that's the least they can do, because taking a life, really, you can never buy that back. And we've seen cases and cases where the police in the United States and even elsewhere in the world, would I say, fail to exercise restraint or do their due diligence, and then just end the promising lives of people who have, careers ahead of them, lives to live and people to love, and then just snatch that, because of racial profiling and all the challenges. But this day in history, Louisville agreed to a $12 million settlement with her family.
This was one of the saddest, moments of 2020, and this was just a few weeks, I believe, after George Floyd's killing. And sadly, I remember that there was an online campaign for Breonna Taylor that ran for months, because it didn't seem like her death was making the news, and I think it was because it now became an online campaign that they started to take it seriously, because she was killed in her sleep, without, being violent or without the police feeling threatened in any way. They stormed into her apartment and shot at her while she was asleep. Eventually, there was that online campaign, and her name continued to be mentioned. I remember tennis player Naomi Osaka also, made mention of her name while it became popular back then. And that was the reason that they started to take it serious, and eventually she got this settlement. But 2020 was a year of, I think it was the year of the largest discussion in quite a while concerning racial discrimination and
police
brutality against African Americans and some of all of that. So sadly, this is how it ended. 12 million naira would obviously never bring back Breonna Taylor. But $12 million, I beg your pardon, would never bring back Breonna Taylor. But The conversation continues with regards to racial discrimination and police brutality, including here in Nigeria, because apparently police are back on the streets here in Nigeria. Well, that's another discussion for another day. Short break. When we come back, our first major conversation for today. Who are these 6 Nigerians that have been accused of funding terror and funding the Boko Haram sect here in Nigeria? The United Arab Emirates has put out, a list that has 38 names. We're going to be taking a look at this and seeing what the Nigerian government should immediately start to do. We're going to be getting into that conversation after the short break here on Plus TV Africa. Stay with us.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect them. If you no talk, they go beat you. Now 2,500 they pay.
for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
You're welcome back to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Our first major conversation is about the Boko Haram insurgency and the big question about who their financiers are. Now, on Monday, the United Arab Emirates announced the names of 38 persons who are alleged to be financiers of terrorism and 15 agencies. Now, among them are 6 Nigerians. Their names are Abdurrahman Ado Musa, Salihu Yusuf Adamu, Bashir Ali Yusuf, Mohammed Ibrahim Isa, Ibrahim Ali Al-Hassan, and Suraja Abubakar Mohammed. Now, these people have been placed on the UAE's watch list. And this is coming a year after the United Arab Emirates, indicted them for sponsoring Boko Haram in Nigeria. Now, a Nigerian government official was also said, to have been involved in sponsoring the sect, but government officials in the UAE are yet to publicly name this particular persons. And now we've invited a security analyst, Mr. Yahuza Getso, to talk about this. Good morning, Mr. Getso.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, good, thank you. So 6 Nigerians on the UAE watch list for Boko Haram terrorism financiers. What's your reaction?
Well, the list didn't come to me as a surprise because Nigerian government have already
Mr. Getso, can you hear us?
Preempted this information, made it very clear.
Okay.
Yeah, Minister of Information made it very clear that they know the finances of the Boko Haram, they know who they are, they know where they are, and many times, many top officials of the governments of Buhari have made it very clear that they know who they are and they know where they are and we're trailing them. So we don't know what really delayed.
Well, Mr. Getso, can you hear us?
The process on.
Might be a little struggle with sound from Yahuza Getso this morning, but once again, the conversation is on the 6 Nigerians named by the United Arab Emirates as alleged sponsors of Boko Haram, and what must be done. Yahuza Getso, can you hear us?
Yes, of course, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, we seem to be struggling with sound from your end, but go ahead. What does this mean, and do you think that the Nigerian government itself could have in any way put out these names earlier?
Yes, of course. Nigerian government have already mentioned to publicly, Minister of Information Lai Mohammed, in a statement credited to him many times, he made it very clear that they know the finances of the Boko Haram, they know who they are, and they are working out more, they are putting out measures and modalities. So probably the excuse we can give them is that probably they have been working hard to get the justification through investigation and ensure that, yes, of course, and probably they were working in collaboration with other multinational corporations. And it is known to us that some arrests were made sometimes back in Kano, in some places within the part of Nigeria in respect to that. So this didn't come to us as a surprise.
Yeah, but do you think that this investigation should have been released or should have been stated by the Nigerian government itself and not the UAE?
Yes, of course. Nigerian government was a bit relaxed because they have not done their homework. Had it been they have done their homework, they could have arrested them long before now. And the list could have been shared with the international community, not to wait until the United Arab Emirates sharing the list and declaring them wanted. This is a slap It's a diplomatic slap, it's a security slap, and it exposes the weakness of our intelligence, and it also exposes the weakness of Nigeria's investigation procedure, and also it also exposed the weakness of Nigeria's capability in managing situations, especially dealing with issues of criminal and criminality, especially bilateral and multilateral criminals, especially dealing with issues around the banditry. These have really made it very clear, as we have been saying, that even the bandits within the North Central, Northwest, Northeast, and all parts of the country are known, and the communities know who they are. It's only that government is not doing what is expected to do. That is it.
So, Mr. Getso, how can we rationalize a situation where the government claims to know the sponsors of Boko Haram and they refuse to disclose that list to Nigerians? But when you have security analysts who have, confidential information come out to share that with the media, those people are arrested and questioned.
Well, yes, of course. Like I made mention earlier, this have given a kind of portray our inability, incapability, and even a question on, do we really have a sovereign government? Is Nigeria really a sovereign state? If we're a sovereign state, why didn't we have been clamoring and borrowing money in the name of supporting the security, fighting the insurgency, fighting the Boko Haram, and a huge amount of money, as I've been making it very clear that since independence, there is no government that spent the money to the extent of which the Buhari administration spent in respect to security. But yet, there is no result, because this have exposed more that the Nigerian government was not really, there is no political commitment, no administrative commitment, there is no seriousness from the Buhari administration. If at all the Buhari administration was serious, they could have arrested and even investigated and handed over these guys, if it means that handing them over to international community for necessary action, or dealing with them decisively, prosecuting them before the court of law in Nigeria, and ensuring that the needed things has been done. And that could have couldn't have allowed the number of people that they have been terrorizing, because it is the financing them that give them the courage and the confidence and the ability to have killed thousands and destroyed a lot of resources, and also displaced a lot of communities, and so on and so forth.
Okay, well I want to go further with some of the things that you mentioned earlier about the Nigerian government dragging their feet and allowing the United Arab Emirates to put this information forward first. Does that also, because yes, the Minister of Information has said that they know the sponsors of Boko Haram or terrorism. There's also been talks about a trial of 400 persons, I think it's meant to be taking place on the 17th, 400 sponsors of Boko Haram. But all these things still look shrouded in secrecy. Does this slow pace and the fact that you've described this as the government dragging its feet, does it also then maybe tell you that even now that the UAE has put out this list, not much will be done to find these people? And do you agree with those who feel that the Nigerian government has somehow been shielding these persons?
Well, I can't agree that Nigerian government have been shielding because they made an attempt. If they didn't make any attempt for making any arrest, then we can say that they have been shielding. But since they have made an arrest, and they have made pronouncements on several occasions and many different times that they know the sponsors and they know who they are, and they are working out modalities, and they have made some arrests, like I mentioned, in some of the forex traders. So I think it's a commendable effort, but at the same time, really, Nigerian government didn't do what is expected of them, because they could have arrested, detain them, and hand them over to international community if needs be, or deal with them, prosecute them before the court of law in Nigeria, and manage them accordingly. But what is really baffling me and any other responsible person is the fact that the arrest has been made for many people by the DSS from the forex market in Kano and other places. But yet, There is no feedback to the community, and they have not been prosecuted before the court of law, and there is no information whatever about their whereabouts, and so on and so forth. So this have really made it very clear that there is no political commitment, and we don't have a serious government, and we don't have a committed government who is really serious about the life and property and the issue of fighting the insurgency. They are only making policies, but they are not really ready to fight the menace of the insurgency. That is very clear. But to some extent, we will now wait to see what Nigerian government will do, probably within a week or within 3 or 4 days, if Nigerian government could be able to bring out this list of these guys that United Arab Emirates already listed, and hand them over to the United Arab Emirates.
Mr. Getso.
To hand them over could be taken as soon as. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that really leads to my next question. You said, we need to see what happens in the next few days, in the next week. So what really should we expect to see from the government? Should we expect the government, the SSS and other security agencies going on a raid, on a hunt for these guys and arresting them? And also, what should be the modalities for prosecuting these persons? You mentioned that, the government should find them and take them to the UAE. So does that judicial question come in as to where these people should be prosecuted? Should they be prosecuted in the UAE, as it's the United Arab Emirates government that have gone ahead to do the investigation to find the names of these people? Or should that be the responsibility of the Nigerian government? And if it's for the Nigerian government, do you trust that the government will do its due diligence and ensure that they see this case to the end?
Well, in this case, I can't trust the Nigerian government actually in that respect. But in the case of who is responsible or who is expected to prosecute them or to deal with them, as far as law is concerned, it depends on the agreement, the memorandum of understanding as far as prosecution is concerned of a Nigerian criminal found who committed an offense in UAE or who committed an offense in Nigeria, or a UAE indigent that who may be committing an offense in Nigeria. So it all depends on what we have on the memorandum of understanding. The memorandum of understanding will be the determining factor. But at the same time, I am very confident and optimistic that Nigerian government have the law guiding principles as far as legal law is concerned for what to do. So probably after dealing with them, if there is a signed agreement or part of the memorandum of understanding for the bilateral relation and diplomatic relation among other charters signed by Nigeria and the other conventions, international United Nations Convention and other things, if that it be, then Nigerian government can hand them over for onward action by the United Arab Emirates, because there may be probably some of the connivers within the United Arab Emirates, because Nigerians alone cannot be in the United Arab Emirates to commit such a huge offense for Nigeria, because it is not only to Nigeria, because it has a link with other terror countries like Mali, like Niger, like Libya, like Somali, like Sudan and other countries where ISWAP is, where Boko Haram is. So it's a network. So looking at the network, the terrorist behavior, and looking at how they network themselves, definitely there must be a connival somewhere. So there is need to have a kind of bilateral, looking into the bilateral agreement, and also looking at the signed convention and looking at the point bulletin into that in that convention, and to see what Nigeria and United Arab Emirates have in the bilateral relation and multilateral relation, so that it can be dealt according to the international law. So there probably an international court of justice need to come in, but at the same time, Nigeria will also have its own law, which probably, if they are in Nigeria, because yet nobody is sure that these guys are in Nigeria, even though it has been made very clear that they are Nigerians.
Indeed.
Now, I want us to now talk about the immediate steps that are expected, or talk a little further on the immediate steps that are expected. One thing that has been repeatedly mentioned is the Nigerian government taking action and finding these people. Like my colleague here has asked, if they will be prosecuted here in Nigeria or in the UAE. But one thing that, people would also question is if these people can actually be found. Because, of course, Nnamdi Kanu was traced and tracked and eventually found somewhere outside Nigeria. There have been people who have said if you can find him, over there, then it shouldn't be difficult to find, persons here in Nigeria and, of course, a terrorist here in Nigeria. Do you expect that the Nigerian government will be able to trace these 6 individuals and find where they are and get them arrested? Do you also think that it's important that this is done?
Well, I don't think I have that confidence. The reason being the bandits, ordinary bandits who cannot read or write, who don't even know where to take the money after collection, kidnapping for ransom or whatever, have given Nigerian government, a sovereign state of Nigeria, a so-called sovereign state of Nigeria, an ultimatum. It happens in Kaduna, it happens in Zamfara, it happens in Sokoto, it happens in many parts of the country. So I don't think I have that confidence that Nigerian government can really have the capability or the willingness to find these guys, arrest them, and do the needful. But we will not preempt the Nigerian security at the same time, a Nigerian authority. Like I made mention, we are giving them up to 4 or 5 days. Let's see what will happen between now and next week, Monday. Probably, if we can, Nigerian security can really, so that probably they will rebuild our confidence and regain the lost glory. We hope they can do. But from the experience of what happened in the last 7-8 years, I don't think Nigeria's security are really serious, and they will really have the commitment, and other reasons will really allow them to fish out these guys and do the needful accordingly as immediate as possible.
Okay, Mr. Getso, I want us to address what now seems to be a misinformation regarding this situation, this story. So one of the names that the UAE put out was the name Abdurrahman Ado Musa. Reacting to this, Nigerians have gone ahead on social media to share pictures of the Executive Director of Regulatory Corporate Affairs at Nine Mobile, whose name is Abdurrahman Ado. So people are saying, oh, this Executive Director at Nine Mobile is a terrorism financier. They're putting his pictures all over social media, and there seems to be like a campaign against him. But Nine Mobile has put out a statement saying that their director, Abdurrahman Ado, is a respectable, law-abiding Nigerian who served the country diligently in public service for over 3 decades, and that his name has no Musa in it. His name is just Abdurrahman Ado and not Abdurrahman Ado Musa, and that the names is purely coincidental, asking Nigerians to disregard that list and understand that, it's a case of a mistaken identity. How do you respond to this story?
Well, that could be ascertained by only the court of law, and also the same Abdurrahman Ado. He has all his documents are available, and United Arab Emirates must have their fingerprints and all other required information. Forensic investigation will be conducted, and then we will get the outcome of that investigation will reveal if the same Ado Musa of Mobile is the same person that being the suspect or the financier or otherwise.
Okay, so Mr.
So this can only be revealed by the outcome of the investigation. So I cannot go into this.
Okay, so I also want to ask you about the possibility that these 6 names that the UAE has released are simply just, aliases by the real terrorists, names that they have and identities that they have created to cover their tracks. Is that a possibility?
Sorry, come again. It breaks along.
Okay, I'm saying the UAE has released the list and there are 6 Nigerians on that list. I called the name earlier on the show. So I'm asking if there is a possibility that these 6 names are simply aliases, that the actual terrorism financiers created to cover their tracks.
Like I mentioned earlier, definitely they may not be the only 6. By the time they are arrested, they are prosecuted, investigation will reveal. I am very confident and I'm very optimistic that there must be others who are working with them, either directly or indirectly. So probably a more local arrest will be made, because if these guys are in United Arab Emirates and they are Nigerians, it means that they should be sending the money through Nigerians who are based in Nigeria for onward. You know, like I keep mentioning, in the case of Bandatri in Northwest, Northeast, and Northwest, North Central, and part of Northeast, there are arm importers, there are arm transporters, there are arm traders, and there are arms distributors. So definitely there must be some other group of people who are responsible for transporting and moving the money between one hand and another, and also responsible for purchasing of arms and movement of the arms. So definitely there must be part of the intelligence team, maybe a rotten personnel within the cycle of the security operatives. There may be, I'm not sure, but there are elements that can give us we can confidently say that there is a link within the country, not only these 5 guys. So definitely if the investigation go further, there will be more arrests that will be made locally, if at all Nigerian government will be serious and will give it the right attention required.
Okay, Mr. Getso, I'm not talking about if there are other people besides these 6. I'm talking about, the possibility that these names are fake names, fake identities that were created to cover up the tracks of the real terrorism financiers. Do you think the UAE might have possibly done its due diligence that, it found that these are the real identities of the people, or if these are, like I mentioned, fake names, aliases that they've come up with?
That is very possible. That is very possible. And all this can only be revealed by the result of the investigation. So we have to allow the investigation to take its course before we can justify. And based on the feedback that we will get from the investigation team, if at all the serious, there will be a committed and serious investigation team of professionals who can do the needful and bring out the feedback. So from there, we can know that probably it is correct or it is wrong.
Okay, now let's talk about the 400 that the Nigerian government claims to be sending to trial. They say they have 400 names that have been alleged to also be terrorism financiers here in Nigeria, and they should be going to trial sometime this month. Do you think that these names should also remain anonymous, and of course, until proven guilty, or should the Nigerian government go ahead and, share some of these names to the public?
Not really. The Nigerian government doesn't have, shouldn't have bring out this list. They should keep it until the result of the investigation is out. Because otherwise, if my name is listed out of the list and a result of the investigation, it comes out to be negative, that I am not part of, or Mr. A, Mr. B, and C are not part of it, then definitely they will take Nigeria into court for blackmail and other things.
Well, I guess these persons have already been arrested. It's not just random names that they throw in there. Because
yes,
if they are going to court...
If they are arrested, I don't know any one of them. Yeah. Do you know?
No, of course not.
Do you know any one of them?
Of course not, and that's what I'm asking. So the same... This is what I'm trying to find out. So the same way the UAE has put out these 38 names, the Nigerian government claims to have 400 persons that have been arrested and will be sent to trial for terrorism financing. Do you think that these names should still remain anonymous all through the trial until found guilty?
Yes, of course. The list should still remain anonymous. United Arab Emirates has its own reasons. Like I said, usually, in the bilateral relation and multilateral relation, there are certain agreements. Now, United Arab Emirates cannot just say that they have 6 people. The Nigerian government will want to know who they are. An international community will want to know who they are, so that they can quickly be prompted into the immigration status, immigration operations at the national and international level, at the bilateral and multilateral level, so that the immigration and other security at the airport and the seaport and other transportation and other proceedings will definitely help the United Arab Emirates and Nigeria in fast tracking and arresting them. But these ones in Nigeria, they are already, Nigerian government have done its homework before they go into the arrest.
Okay. Mr. Getso, we know that the UAE has punishment of up to 10 years in prison for those who are found to be involved in terrorism. So we're looking forward to really how this plays out. But lastly, before I let you go, the name Nigeria has been identified with terrorism for too long. And my question to you is, how can we redeem the name Nigeria in the international community?
That is when you have a serious government. That is when you have a sovereign government. That is when you have leaders. That is when you have commitment from the leaders, political and administrative will. That is when you fight corruption. That is when you have legal proceedings. That is when you end the leadership of people who believe in themselves and their immediate family along with their errand boys, not it's only when you have the leaders who believe in Nigeria as a country and who have the passion and patriotism. But right now, presently, that is the missing link. We don't have leaders who believe in Nigeria. We don't have leaders who believe in Nigerian sovereignty. We don't have leaders who believe in Nigeria as a country and working towards ensuring that they work for Nigeria, they work for Nigerians, and they work diligently and in accordance with the respect of law and also with respect to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We are having something else. We only have geography as Nigeria, but in practice, the Constitution of Nigeria is not being respected by our leaders of today and our leaders of yesterday. So until and unless we have reorientation in the outcome of our actions and inactions, that is the time when we will have that.
Okay.
All right. Jose Getso, thank you very much for your time this morning. It's a very interesting discussion, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, goodbye.
All right, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we're moving into our next discussion, and that is a protest at the United Nations. A couple of weeks ago, we had spoken about this.
Yes.
There was meant to be a 1 million
man march. Yes. And what we're saying is that Yoruba Nation agitators have actually gone ahead to protest in front of the United Nations, the General Assembly that they're having in New York. And we'll basically talk more about that when we come back from the break. Will the protests work, and how's it going? Stay with us.
Decision point. The way your baby's presenting, we have to rush you in. And my partner at the time was like, "You going to cut her? Are you going to cut her? Is it going to leave a scar?" And I said, "Am I a belly dancer? What is the problem here?"
No, I'm vulnerable about the future of the children, the future of mine and the future of the generation of my children.
I want to have nude pictures taken. Of you? Yes,
Yeah,
but
we
without
had
showing my private parts. I want to put it in my front room. And they said, "You can't do that. People will be embarrassed when they came into your house." I said, "Well, it's my body and it's my front room."
All the things that we do, what is the purpose of it?
I just realized that I was more trusting before I was 6. So many women, they just feel like I have to cook for my husband, I have to breastfeed my children, I have to pick them from school.
Because society expects
Then you
them
go
to.
home and you cry and you stop your career, you can't do anything, then you blame everybody. You took that choice.
Welcome once again to The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Our final conversation this morning is on the protest at the United Nations General Assembly. It's by the Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination. Its convener, Professor Banji Akintoye, had, of course, spoken a few weeks ago, declaring that there will be a protest from the 14th to the 24th in New York. To share some of the challenges and that Nigeria is currently facing. They have spoken about genocides and ethnic cleansing and some of all of that. And they will be taking their protest to the United Nations. It did kick off yesterday. And so we're speaking this morning with the public affairs analyst, Mark Adebayo, who's joining us. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Adebayo, let's get your thoughts on the idea of protesting at the United Nations General Assembly. How relevant is this for the NINAS group?
Yeah, first thing is that it is strategically incumbent. What the action they have taken is strategically incumbent. Nobody is going to shoot at them at the UN Assembly. Nobody is going to arrest them. Nobody is going to disturb them. Nobody is going to harangue them. So they are protected by law, both local and international laws, to do what they are doing. If they did that in Nigeria, it would have been a different ballgame. So it is strategically incumbent upon them to do that. And of course, what they are asking for, the United Nations is best pleased to give it reality, to bring it to bear. That is why what they are doing today is strategic, it is relevant, it is important, and I think it will draw the attention of the whole world to the quagmire that we are facing in this country today. So kudos to them. If my schedule had permitted, I would have been there with them now, solidarizing.
All right, I want us to look a little closer at the reasons for their protest. Professor Akintoye stated that the people of the South and Middle Belt want to show the world the crimes against humanity and attacks on press freedom, free speech, and other criminalities being aided by the current administration here in Nigeria. Are these genuine concerns? Are there really genocides and crimes against humanity being carried out in Nigeria that should give rise for a protest like this?
Every claim and every allegation on that petition is genuine, is germane, it is realistic. Now, the issue we are having now is that some of us who, if you like, call us moderates, who rather, advocated for a restructured Nigeria, you understand? We are now being pushed aside. Our voices are now being drowned because the government refused to listen to the voice of reason that restructuring is better than disintegration. They refused to listen. And so, for that reason, the people that believe in the self-determination, which is a fundamental human right of every people in the world, according to the United Nations Charter, so you cannot blame them. If for almost 20 years that we have been clamoring for restructuring in this country, Afenifere has been clamoring for restructuring. Many groups in the Southwest and the South and the Middle Belt have been clamoring for restructuring, that this country should be restructured, that we should go back to what was working for us, the Constitution of 1963. Let each zone, let each region determine its socio-economic and political fate by itself. So in Nigeria, they restructure Nigeria, where power is devolved to the zones, but the powers that be are refused, and that was giving birth to self-determination agitations now, and it is a train that is moving that nobody can stop anymore. So the issue of restructuring is no longer becoming popular, especially in the southern part of the country and the Middle Belt. So people are saying that even if you restructure the country, it's not going to work. And then when they bring in the government as an enabler of this crisis, the question we should ask ourselves is that how is it that in the past 6 years plus that it is the issue of adults, the issue of especially these killer adults that have dominated our polity, and that if there is any issue that the Buhari government is emotional about, that is concerned about, that is prompt about, that acts decisively about is the issue of the killer others. Once people begin to complain, the number one spokes organ for Miyetti Allah today is the federal government of Nigeria, it's the presidency. So now, people are complaining that these people are killing people, they are destroying farms, they are destroying towns and cities, they are overrunning places and taking over 100 villages and hamlets on the plateau have been taken over by these killer others, and they are renaming those villages and hamlets. You know, they are renaming them. And these criminals have remained on the scene of crime without a direct intervention by the federal government. So now you begin to wonder whether it is not legitimate to allege that the government is complicit in the activities of these guys. So if the government had listened to the call for restructuring, I don't think we will be at this stage now. You know, if we are listening and have gone, and then of course the 2014 Confab report, which recommended a restructured Nigeria, should have been looked into and acted upon. Even if they are going to make some little bit of amendment, but even during the campaign, the president made it very clear that he was not going to touch that report, and that is the result we are seeing now. It does seem that the country, the way things are going, it does seem that Nigeria is unsustainable, because you can see that even the security agencies are overwhelmed now, despite their best efforts. Things are getting out of hand. Look at they just went to a military camp in Zamfara State, killed 12 security personnel, took away so much arms. So, and that is a problem to us. It's like, you know, most of the, you know, before the late terrorist leader was killed, Shekau, he was boasting that, you know, about 50 to 60% of the weapons they are using were seized from the Nigerian military.
Mr. Adebayo, yes,
yeah?
I want us to, you know, still talk about this issue regarding how Professor Banji, NINA's chairman, has worded their concerns. He's saying that, you know, there's a genocide going on in Nigeria. And the meaning of a genocide really is the deliberate killing of another group or another nation to totally wipe them out. But when we look at the insecurity situation in Nigeria, yes, we have had incidences of crimes committed by people from northern Nigeria on those in southern Nigeria. But it seems like the bulk of that security challenge is within the north, by northerners on northerners. That's what it seems to be. So would you say Nenas is right to describe what's happening in Nigeria as a genocide?
Well, if you look at what is happening in Southern Kaduna for the past 6 years, what is happening in Southern Kaduna is qualified to be called a genocide because of the concentration of attacks and killings and destruction of the indigenous people who are mostly Christians or animists. You understand? That qualifies for, you know, the argument that most of the crimes and violence happen in the north is neither here nor there. What happens is that, as a matter of fact, I believe some people in the north, Zamfara, Borno, and Co, be in the forefront of this struggle. Because, well, yeah, let us consider the fact that most of the violence and killings and bloodshed, you know, are limited to the north. But it is not an excuse for inaction by the federal government of Nigeria. You know, whether people are being killed en masse in the north or in the south is neither here nor there. What is happening is that people are being killed. That is more or less, if you don't want to call it genocide, call it pogrom. You can call it pogrom, mass killing of people. And, you know, how did we get here? We got here because we have refused to learn from history. We have refused to learn from history. You know, we went to war in this country, a bloody civil war that cost over 2 million lives, almost 3 million lives, the equivalent of the number of Jews that were killed during the Second World War. And we went through all that, and we didn't learn any lesson. We have seen coups and counter coups in this country because of bad governance, because of injustice. Still, we have refused to learn a lesson. I'm not saying that all Nigerians only click. You know, if you want to paper over it, you call them the ruling class. We don't have a ruling class in Nigeria. We have a ruling clique. So they have not learned a single lesson about all the tragedies and problems and troubles that have befallen this country. And that is rather unfortunate. It's rather unfortunate.
All right,
what we are seeing is due to the lack of understanding of our history and the lack of understanding of why we have to do things differently.
Okay. Mr. Adebayo, the crux of the matter here for NINAS, why they have gathered in New York, where the United Nations General Assembly is holding, is because they say they want self-determination. They want a referendum in Nigeria to be able to vote if they want to be part of Nigeria as a country or to break out to have their own state. I want us to talk about the possibility of this platform, this protest at the UN headquarters, giving them what they want. So what's the intended outcome? Is it that the United Nations will talk about this in one of their sessions and be forced to issue statements asking Nigeria to go ahead and put that referendum, clause in the constitution? What exactly are they aiming for, and what might be the outcome of such a protest?
The fundamental expectation of the organizers of the protest is for the United Nations to table Nigeria's issue on the table, put it on the table for discussion, and of course, recommend to the federal government of Nigeria to organize a referendum, an internationally supervised referendum. That is the ultimate goal, to get the United Nations to intervene by telling Nigeria, look, you need to do a referendum. If people, because it's one of the rights of the people, self-determination is one of the rights of internationally recognized rights of a people, to say that we need to, you have to do a referendum. Yeah, and if there is enough international pressure on the government, they will balk who? They will have to, that's to the tune of the local and international communities about organizing a referendum in Nigeria. We have to organize a referendum. One thing I've been advising, actually, to my Yoruba people and activists and self-determination groups is that, okay, we need to do as much of local, intra-Yoruba advocacy as we are doing internationally. So that when we go to the referendum, we go with one voice and we go with one vote. And then it will come out the way we want it. Permit me to say that I still have some modicum of faith in the corporate existence of Nigeria if it is restructured. I know that if today the federal government decide to listen to restructuring advocates and decide to put in place the mechanism to restructure the country, whereby power is devolved to the zones, that will be the people who are advocating for self-determination are likely to, they are not going to be as vociferous as they are now.
Mr. Adebayo, I spoke to Pa Adebanjo, the leader of the Afenifere, about the same issue regarding restructuring, the agitations of the Yoruba nation. And he said that he highly doubts that this restructuring that they want would happen during the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. Do you share that same belief?
General Muhammadu Buhari will not attend to restructuring, will not even listen to restructuring. He's not going to listen to self-determination. He's not going to listen to the call for justice and balance and equity in this country. It is not in his nature. It is not in his nature. It just seems that it is not in his nature to engage things that are just.
So what then is the essence of the protest if you believe that the president would not, go ahead and accede to your demands?
You have to put pressure on government. You have to put on government. You put pressure on government, all over the world. A government that refuses to bend a little to the wish of the people ultimately will break. That's what happens. So we cannot withstand international pressure at the end of the day. Now, if what Baba Adebanjo said is not as if it is impossible to achieve. What he is saying is that this president will resist it. He has been resisting it. We clamored for balance in government appointments. He refused to listen. We said we don't want open grazing. We don't want these animals overrunning our schools, our houses, our our farms, our towns, causing mayhem. He said no, that is going to give them either Ruga or something. When that one could not work, he said they should go and look for a moribund, a dead, they said, that he wants to open up grazing routes. I mean, everything about him is just to satisfy, the president is not helping himself, he's not helping matters, because he keeps doing things that, portray him as somebody who is ethno-religiously biased. So he's not doing anything to disabuse the minds of people who accuse him of ethnocentric biases. He's not doing anything to disabuse our minds. So that is the problem we are having. Why is he so fixated on confiscating lands for these others in this age? When governors are saying, come, we will give you land to ranch your cattle, the president is insisting on grazing routes. And then that is creating more violence, more bloodshed, more killings, more kidnapping, and more insecurity. Why? You begin to wonder. So he's not going to listen, but his hands can be forced by mass protest, consistent. The 11 days they are going to use at the UN, I'm sure there's going to be, there will be some positive results. I know that.
Oh, well, a lot of people may, not agree that, there will be any actual results. But I want us to talk now about collaboration of NINAS, because it seems they are mostly about the Yoruba agitation and Middle Belt. Do you think that they should seek some partnership or collaboration or join hands with other self-determination groups, including the IPOB? And maybe the Shiites in the north, who have also had their own protests running for many years. Do you think it's important that NINA starts to build these collaborations to give themselves more numbers and give themselves a louder voice that might be more effective?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that should be done. As a matter of fact, not just IPOB and other people, even northern groups, there are northern groups that also believe in restructuring of Nigeria. There are northern groups who believe that. There are northern people, there are northerners, there are northern opinion leaders who believe, as a matter of fact, in the self-determination of the country. So I believe we should reach across the Benue and the Niger, all over the country, every station of this country. We should not be going on this struggle from the premise of thinking that the whole of the North does not want self-determination. No. There are people who want self-determination. Let me tell you what happened in the 2014, one of the things that happened in 2014 confab. I wasn't there, but I've read much of the reports, and I'm close to many people that went to that confab. You will discover that in the Middle Belt that is now part and parcel of self-determination, initially resisted even restructuring. Yes. Minority groups in the north, in the core north, not Middle Belt now, resisted restructuring because they said that if you restructure the country and you allow each soul to determine its fate, that the minority groups in the north will be wiped out. That the minority group in the north, the Christians in the north, the enemies in the north will be wiped out. Because by that time, there is no national, mechanism to control what happens in each of the zones. So that was why at the initial stage, the minorities in the north and the Middle Belt didn't want to, agree on. It took Pastor Tunde Bakari, late Yinka Odumakin, Comrade Yinka Odumakin, and many people to convince them on how to go. To support restructuring. So now the self-determination group must not marginalize some groups in the north who also believe in either restructuring or self-determination. Because I have Fulani friends, some of them are academics, who tell me that, look, you guys are blackmailing us. You are blackmailing the Fulani. You are just, and they blame the president for that anyways. But he has said that, okay, let's even go for this restructuring and let everybody be on their own. In the corporate Nigeria, they don't believe in the self-determination or disintegration or whatever, but they believe in a restructured Nigeria. No. If you go to the north today, the educated ones who are not, religious extremists will tell you that Nigeria will be better off restructured.
All right, but Mr. Adebayo, which do you think should be the biggest fight of NINAS and every other person who's agitating? Should it be fight for restructuring, a fight for self-determination, or a fight for constitution review?
It is too late to convince leaders to support restructuring. They believe all of us who are advocating for restructuring are just in our time, and they have some justification for that. I would say that they should continue putting the pressure on the government, locally and internationally, on self-determination. Maybe we might just get restructuring, because once they see that, it's like this self-determination, the way out of it, we might just get a restructuring. And for me, I believe that a restructured Nigeria is better than a ruptured Nigeria. I still have some little bit of hope and faith in the corporate system of Nigeria, of a restructured Nigeria.
Yeah, so you don't believe in...
And tell me that a cow can come to my house.
Yeah, so you don't believe in a review of the 1999 Constitution and better electoral laws? You don't think that those things would probably be more important at this time, as of course Nigeria remains united, but with a better constitution, better electoral laws, stronger voice, a democratic voice to the people?
Now, even this constitution that we know, this Decree 4 of 1999, that we call Constitution, as defective as it is, gives us a federation, a federal republic of Nigeria. How is that being followed, especially under the current president? There's no constitution you give to a country that is faulty, that is going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah, so that's why there's talk about a constitutional review.
Look, if either for restructuring or self-determination, you still have to review the constitution. So don't let us put the cart before the horse. I mean, if we decide that we are going to do restructuring, it means we are going to go back to that constitution. If it's self-determination, we are going to still go to and review that constitution. So what are we going to achieve? If this constitution, the current constitution is being manipulated in a very negative way. Now, how could a federal government tell states that they cannot set up structures to secure their people, that they cannot give order to criminals in their forests and towns to live, and the federal government will say, no, you cannot do that. To criminals? So why is it that the current president is protecting people who it looks like he is protecting people who are a problem to some people? They are a problem to our economy in the South. They are a problem to our security in the South. They are a problem to our well-being, our welfare, and our peace. And we say we don't want cows moving about. We want them run. Nobody's go back to anywhere. If you want to ranch your cattle, we are going to give you a space to do that. But the president is saying, no, you cannot be moving about. You can't be bringing cattle. You can't be bringing cattle if I don't have a fence in my house. So cattle that is passing will just come and mess up my compound, and you expect me to look at that? No, I won't take it lightly with anybody that does that to me. And the president must listen to other voices. And I support Nina's. Let me say, I support Nina's call for the declaration of EHL as a terrorist organization, because I believe they are.
All right. Mark Adebayo, thank you very much for your time this Wednesday morning. And we wish you a very interesting day ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Adebayo.
Thank you so much. Well done. Your station is doing well. Continue promoting pro-people, pro-justice issues. And the sky is your beginning. Well done. Well done.
All right.
Thank you. And that's it on The Breakfast this morning. It's been a roller coaster ride talking about the issues in the country, politics, insecurity, education, and yeah, it's a wrap. Aneta Felix, thanking you very much for joining us today.
And of course, you can catch up on our social media platforms. Pretty simple, at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram. And subscribe to our YouTube channel also at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa.
Bye-bye.
we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect them.
If you no talk, then go beat you.
Now 2,500 when they pay.
For me, I wanted to change that culture. I didn't believe that until you see a white man or you see a foreigner in the kitchen before you can believe that, you know, good food is going to come out of that kitchen.
You can leverage on each other's spaces and, you know, sell. We believe in Nigeria, right? We believe that Nigeria can get better. We, the youth, are the ones that can make it better.
And my products are proudly made in Nigeria.
Made in Nigeria, showing every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. and repeats on Saturday at 8:30 a.m.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Welcome to your favorite program, The Moment of Truth, brought to you by the Citadel Global Community Church. Our God is a God of salvation, far above all principality and power, and might and dominion, that regardless of what happens in this season, you will escape. Say to your neighbor, there is no peace for the wicked. The lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting, but diligence is a man's precious possession. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might.
Moment of Truth with Pastor Tunde Bakare, Sundays, 7 p.m. on Plus TV Africa. Thanks for joining us on Plus News Brief. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa. President Muhammadu Buhari has sought the approval of the Senate for an external loan. This is an addendum to the 2018 to 2021 federal government's external borrowing plan. Buhari's request was contained in a letter addressed to the President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, and read on plenary on Tuesday. Buhari in the letter said the loan will be sourced from the multilateral organizations and it will be used to finance critical projects of the federal and state governments. He urged the Senate to give consideration and approval to the request, given the timing and benefits.
Projects listed in the addendum to the 2018-2021 federal government external borrowing plan are to be financed through sovereign loans from the World Bank, French Development Agency, China Exim Bank, International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, Credit Suisse Group, and Standard Chartered China Export and Credit in this total sum of USD, American dollars, $4,054,476,863 plus Euro 710 million and grant component of USD 125 million dollars. The Senate is kindly invited to note that the projects and programs in the borrowing plan were selected based on positive technical and economic evaluations and the contribution they would make to the socio-economic development of the country, including employment generation and poverty reduction, as well as protection of the most vulnerable and very poor segments of the Nigerian society.
The House of Representatives on Tuesday adjourned plenary to September 15th. The adjournment is equal to the death of one of its members, Representative Adedayo Omolafe. Until his demise, he represented Akure South and Akure North Federal Constituency of Ondo State in the House of Representatives. The Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, announced the death of Omolafe at the plenary. He says it is customary for the House to adjourn sitting once it loses any serving member. Prayers were said to God to grant the family of the late Omolafe the fortitude to bear the loss.
As is customary, we will not be sitting today. We're just here to pay respects. And on that note, I deepest regret announce formally the passing to glory of Honorable Omolafe Isaac Adedayo, representing Akure North, Akure South Federal Constituency, Ondo State. To many of us, he was known simply as Expensive. He passed on during our break on the 15th of August 2021, and the burial arrangements will be communicated by the family.
I believe the assembly have witnessed death upon death. Father, let us not witness it again in Jesus' name. Abba, Father, we commit every soul that are in this chamber. We commit every soul that are in National Assembly working. Father, give us the strength. Let us not witness another death.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a sad note and with a very heavy heart, as it has always been on a day like this, to move that this House do adjourn till tomorrow, 11 a.m.
The Kaduna Police Command has confirmed the abduction of the Emir of Bungudu, Zamfara State, Hassan Atto, at an unspecified number of commuters along the Kaduna-Abuja Highway. The command's public relations officer, ASP Mohammed Jalige, confirmed the incident in a statement issued on Tuesday in Kaduna. Jalige said reports reaching the command indicated that the commuters were intercepted by the bandits who fired shots at random before abducting their victims. He said operatives of the command were dispatched to restore normalcy in the area, as a result of which an officer paid the supreme price. And gunmen attacked the residence of a Kaduna State University lecturer, Dr. Ahmed Buba, in Zaria, Kaduna State, on Monday and seized his 6 children. The gunmen also shot a soldier, Ibuka Okechukwu, dead. The soldier died of gunshot wounds in a hospital. They abducted Rabi Isia, Dr. Buba's neighbor's wife, and 2 of her children also. The bandits were, however, intercepted on Tuesday. A highly reliable source said the bandits numbered about 30 as a police spokesman in the state refused to respond to calls and to text messages. And the House of Representatives Committee on Defense on Tuesday received a delegation from the Defense Academy to brief it on the security breach that took place at the Nigerian Defense Academy, AFACA, on the 24th of August. The Commandant General of the Defense Academy, Major General Ibrahim Yusuf, on Monday told the House that concerned efforts are ongoing to ensure the release of the abducted soldier. Recall that suspected bandits had attacked the NDA in Kaduna Academy, killing 2 officers while asking for a closed-door session. The chairman of the committee, Baba Jimmy Benson, promised to work with the academy to find a lasting solution to the problem.
The ongoing efforts that we are making to recover the abducted officer, and also the measures that the academy is currently placing to ensure that this does not ever occur again. Only on Saturday, I attended the burial of Lieutenant Commander Awolo, who also died as a result of that unfortunate incident.
And efforts are making that this occurrence shall never happen again. I'm also assured by his contribution and the measures they've put into place that this will never happen again. It's an unfortunate incident that happened, but Nigerians should be rest assured that NDA is safe and other military formations along that area has been duly fortified. We're still expecting further reports from them. We've had them to come up with some other documents and further and better particulars so that we can also see and reassess.
Also in the news, a lawmaker representing Nasarawa West in the Senate, Abdullahi Adamu, has declared that the current administration has not failed. Adamu, who is chairman Senate Committee on Agriculture, stated this while briefing state correspondents on Monday in Abuja. According to him, there is no basis for comparing the country with other developing nations. He insists that Nigeria has not failed under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari. He submits also that security challenges bedeviling Nigeria have been ongoing for decades and explained that Parliament can only make laws and recommendations to the executive as it does not have the powers to hire and fire.
The duty to protect the herdsman and the farmer rests squarely on the table of the national government, the state government, and the local government administration. The question to ask is, have the government done what it is supposed to do to protect the Nigerians who are in that calling, in that profession, in that trade? I would say no. My answer is no. And you cannot blame a person who is desperate, who is looking for a means of livelihood, from going to pursue legitimate goals. However, this does not excuse anybody in the course of exercising his right doing harm to somebody else's right.
And the Nigerian Correctional Service says it has recaptured 114 escapees of its Kaba Custodial Center. These were among the 240 inmates who fled on September 12th. The NCOS spokesperson, Mr. Francis Enubori, confirmed this in a statement on Tuesday in Abuja. The Controller General, NCOS, Mr. Haliru Nababa, had since then directed the activation of the immediate recapture procedure. He also ordered detailed investigation to be carried out on the jailbreak. He assured the public of their safety, stating that no effort will be spared in smoking out fugitives from hiding. And Governor Gboyega Oyetola of Osun says his administration is committed to peaceful coexistence as well as security of lives and property in the state. Oyetola said this on Tuesday during a rural engagement program in Olokpa-Labon town in the Olaoluwa Southeast Local Council Development Area of the state. The governor noted that his administration was working hard to strengthen the state's security framework. He's also engaging indigents and non-indigents to ensure sustainable peace in the state. And the PDP Governors Forum has urged the National Assembly to, on resumption, immediately set up its conference committee. And this is to harmonize the different versions of the Electoral Act amendment bills passed by both chambers. The forum made the appeal in a statement by its chairman and Governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwal, on Tuesday in Abuja. The forum said the committee should be set up with a clear mandate to hearken to the wishes of Nigerians. They will also be guided by national interest, particularly on the issue of electronic transmission of results. You're still watching News Brief on Plus TV Africa. Yoruba Nation agitators and other self-determination groups have arrived at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Earlier, the chairman of the Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, Professor Banji Akintoye, declared that a million-man freedom march would hold. It was to hold opposite the United Nations headquarters in New York from the 14th to the 24th of September 2021. Akintoye said the protest is meant to show to the world the genocide being perpetrated by murderous herdsmen, and this is usually in the name of grazing in the south and the middle belt areas of Nigeria. And for COVID-19, Nigeria has surpassed 200,000 cases from the coronavirus pandemic 18 months after the first positive case was identified. The NCDC, via its verified website on Wednesday morning, said the country's COVID-19 cases had jumped to 200,057. The Public Health Agency registered 519 additional COVID-19 infections on Tuesday from 14 states and the Federal Capital Territory. It stated that the 519 additional cases in the country represented an increase from the 387 cases reported on Monday. The agency also said that COVID-19 pandemic killed 18 Nigerians on Tuesday to push the total tally of fatalities in the country to 2,637. And the wife of the Ondo State Governor, Mrs. Betty Anyanwu Akeredolu, has expressed confidence in the abilities of girls to become future female technology leaders, adding that that will change the country's gender narrative. She spoke at the opening ceremony of the 4th edition of Ondo State Be More Summer Boot Camp. It was held at Ondo State Public Service Training Institute. She said the life-enhancing skills the girls acquire in the world-class 2-week program would enable them become selfless, and they'll be the change agents that Nigeria desperately needs.
This summer boot camp is giving you the opportunity to be part of a few young girls who will lead and inspire generations of girl children. Do your best to listen and learn all you can during this boot camp. Now the future is in your hands. Only you can determine how far you will go.
Both affective and psychomotor. And that is part of what you are going to learn here. You will be in the studio to learn, you will be on the pitch to learn, not just the classroom. You will be on the stage to learn. Therefore, give it maximum attention.
You are the future. When you educate a girl child, you educate a nation. I'm rest assured that the future of Ondo State, the next Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, will not be from Delta, will be from Ondo State.
And also in the news, the Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki has barred unvaccinated civil servants from entering government offices at the state. Of course, in other state buildings, including the state secretariat. This was reported yesterday, and of course, Plus TV Africa would bring more details on this report. Now, the news in other parts of Africa. Angola's ex-president, Jose Eduardo dos Santos, has arrived in the southern African nation from Spain since he retired. Dos Santos left the country in 2019 after handing the reins over the previous year to President João Lourenço, who has since targeted his former first family in an anti-graft probe. The length of his stay was not immediately clear. Dos Santos is accused of appointing relatives and friends to top positions during his 38-year presidency of the oil-rich nation. Critics say corruption was rife during his rule, with wealth amassing in the hands of a select few and billions of dollars allegedly embezzled from state-owned companies. Also, Guinea's new military rulers began consultations with political, religious and business leaders on Tuesday. They say it will lead to the formation of a transitional government following the coup that ousted President Alpha Conde on September 5th. In a short address, coup leader Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya urged attendees not to repeat the errors of the past when building a new system of governance. Following the session, main opposition leader Selou Dalien Diallo said political leaders would work to formulate their vision and proposals to the new authorities. Moving outside Africa now, South Korea's military has confirmed that North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles off its east coast. Japan also reported an object was fired and that it may have been a ballistic missile. Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has called the launch outrageous, saying it threatened peace and security in the region. It is the second weapons test North Korea has carried out this week, with the first being a cruise missile. It is not clear exactly where the ballistic missiles were destined for or their flight range, but South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff said its military was maintaining a full readiness posture in close cooperation with the U.S. Also in the news, California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom successfully has fended off an effort to oust him from office, overcoming a Republican campaign to unseat him over his liberal policies on immigration, COVID-19 and crime. Newsom, a first-term governor beset by challenges including the COVID-19 pandemic, extreme drought and severe wildfires, boosted turnout among Democrats with a flurry of late campaigning and overcame the move by Republicans to recall him. In the final days of the race, he appeared alongside President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, who formerly represented California as a U.S. Senator and Attorney General. By late Tuesday, returns showed Newsom easily winning a majority of support from voters who said he should remain in office. The leading Republican gubernatorial candidate, Larry Elder, a black radio talk show host and supporter of former President Donald Trump, garnered about 43% of the vote on a portion of the ballot asking who should replace Newsom if he were recalled. And to business news, the Rivers State government has approached the Supreme Court to challenge the ruling of the Court of Appeal in the value-added tax dispute between the state and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. A senior advocate of Nigeria, SAN, Emmanuel Ukala, alongside 3 other senior lawyers, filed a notice of appeal at the Apex Court. The Attorney General of Rivers State is the appellant, while the FIRS and the Attorney General of the Federation are joined as respondents. The state government, in the 10 grounds of appeal dated September 13, informed the Supreme Court that it was dissatisfied with the decision of the appellate court delivered on Friday last week, in which all parties were directed to maintain status quo. It explained that the implication of the ruling of the appellate court was that parties were restored to their positions before a federal high court in Port Harcourt granted the Rivers State government the right to collect value-added tax instead of the FIRS on August 9th. Also in business, the Lagos State government has signed a green bond. This is part of measures to stimulate economic growth, enhance job creation, and combat climate change. Speaking at the ceremony, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu noted that despite the possible devastating effects, climate change is being increasingly viewed as a gateway to new business opportunities, and this is opening many profitable ways for investors to help protect the planet through green bonds. PlusTvAfrica's State House correspondent, Love Ikuku Oyedoko, brings us more details.
Lagos State is particularly mindful of the effects of climate change, and the Sustainable Development Goals puts a responsibility on us all to protect our climate. Green bonds are a relative new funding instrument for green projects, perhaps the first line of defense against climate change. This is a signing ceremony. Lagos is also well positioned to take advantage of the infrastructure gap in Nigeria, a huge opportunity for green financing via the debt capital markets.
For commerce and financial market activities, and the state's incredible potential for catalyzing broad-based sustainable development call for the need to unlock and attract capital to fund key projects in this great state.
The challenges with green financing is the fact that they are bonds, but they're bonds that are meant for green projects. What that then means is there is a process for verifying and validating that those projects are green, and that invariably means an additional cost. And that's why this partnership is very important, because it then opens up the doorway when our partners support us for us to be able to access that funding.
Governor Sanwo-Olu believes that with the project, the green bonds will assist in unlocking sustainable investment opportunities in Lagos State. It will also open the door to advanced adoption of innovative new technologies.
The Green Bond Framework Development Program is a critical first step towards creating a viable financing option for future green and sustainable projects. So there is no doubt that the green bonds can assist in unlocking a huge potential, a sustainable investment opportunity that we know are abound in Lagos, opening the door to advance adoption of innovative new technology, financing of projects that provide green jobs, and promoting economic and climate resilience is certainly the way to go.
This signing ceremony is another show of commitment from the Sanwo-Olu administration to the overall well-being of the citizens. The Nigerian Green Bond Market Development Program was launched in the Nigerian debt capital markets in June 2018. From Government House, Lagos, Love Ikuku Oyedoku, reporting for PlusTvAfrica.
Now to entertainment news. Comedian and Saturday Night Live alum Norm MacDonald has died following a 9-year cancer battle. He was 61 years old. MacDonald had reportedly kept his cancer diagnosis private, even from his family. The Canadian native, known for his deadpan delivery, was a stand-up comic and writer on the sitcom Roseanne when he was discovered by SNL producer Lorne Michaels. MacDonald was on the show from 1993 to 1998, hosting the variety show's Weekend Update news segment.
This is it for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
And now for sports news, Manchester United coach Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says their 2-1 Champions League defeats to Young Boys on Tuesday makes their road through the group stage much harder, saying now they have to focus on winning their next matches. United had taken an early lead through Cristiano Ronaldo and appeared on course to get the season's Champions League campaign off to a winning start. But Young Boys turned things around in dramatic style in the second half. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's 35th minute send-off proved costly, with no side going on to win the Champions League previously after losing their opening match in the competition's history.
Football in general, it's not just in Champions League. Discipline is a huge part of the game, and Aaron's normally a very, very astute tackler. He's one of the best in the world. So we know we've given ourselves a more difficult task than what we did last year, but everyone thought we were through after 2 games last year. You need 10, maybe 12 points. You need to win your home games, win 1 away from home. And of course, we've lost an opportunity to get 3 points, but we've got 2 home games next, and we're going to focus on them too. Just wants to play it safe, and just one misplaced pass and you've conceded a goal, and then that happens in football. In hindsight, Harry Hindsight is very he's a very good player. So of course, Jesse, if he can get that chance again, he'll turn and swivel and boot it the other way.
It's the first game of the group, and we have loads of time to bounce back from it. But yeah, of course, discipline is a huge part of football. In terms of Jesse, obviously, no footballer likes making mistakes, but he's part and parcel of the game. We're humans. Every footballer makes mistakes. We'll learn from it. He'll learn from it. And he'll pick himself up and he'll be ready to go on Sunday, because that's part and parcel of football. But yeah, of course, discipline's a big part.
Also in sports, Sao Paulo's Albert Einstein Hospital says Pelé has been moved out of intensive care into a general room after the Brazilian soccer legend underwent surgery to remove a tumor in his right colon. The hospital added that in the statement that the 80-year-old is in good clinical condition. A three-time World Cup winner, Pelé was admitted to hospital earlier this month after a tumor in his right colon was found during routine tests. The tumor was removed and sent for analysis. Pelé has suffered from hip problems for years and cannot walk unaided. That's the news brief. For more, please follow us at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa. Thanks for watching.